better say something to interrupt those seconds of copyrighted music. That was live? Ladies and gentlemen, I think that was live, or was recorded live.
Perfect sound for the car, home, or...
So that was Frank Sinatra. I certainly hope so, because I'm going to talk about Frank Sinatra. I just realized his name, Frank, means, you know, forthright, straight shooter, say what you mean what you say. He's Frank. So, there you go. I never thought about that before, but I think it certainly fits him. I mean, he's called the chairman of the board. He got his Oscar. He had his movie star wives. He had his family. He's just like, you know, it seems like Frank's a good name for the career and the life that he led, right? But I never thought about that before. There's so many names that have meaning that ties in with who they were or what they did. I don't really want to give a list of those right now, but I'm collecting a list of those. When you're a writer, you try to give your characters names that go with the characterization, but you don't want them to be too obvious. And in the news, and in what we're told is true, there's a lot of those names that are just too obvious, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So Frank Sinatra was seemingly straightforward. He wanted Ava, he followed Ava. He wanted Mia, he got Mia. He was involved with the mafia, supposedly. So that, you know, that talks about, that brings up the idea of subterfuge and not being frank and, you know, doing things that weren't straightforward. But I don't know. I mean, the dog he gave Marilyn Monroe, she named it Maff, or Maff, or Mafia. So in some ways he was straight up with his connections with the mob, and maybe that was part of his charm. You know, he wasn't afraid to say forthright what had made him a success or what had helped him along. I didn't really like Frank Sinatra when he was alive and I was alive, because I had missed the time that he was a teen idol. I had no idea that youngsters had liked him, but of course the people that liked him when I was around had also liked him when he was young, because they had been young at the same time. You know, I'm too young to appreciate his career because I didn't live through it. But now I certainly like it a lot better because I've heard a lot more of the decades of what he used to sound like and what he sounded like that I remember, and of course different versions of different songs. You know, when I'm used to Ella singing a song, I want to hear how other people do that same song and so forth. So this is just a thought that I had, that Frank lived a frank life. He did it his way, for instance. Straightforward, straight shooter, forthright, said what he meant what he said. You were either his friend or you weren't, is the impression I get. One thing I liked about him that was also surprising, that I got in a biography, I think it was entitled Frank and Ava, but it was a biography of them together, their relationship. And the thing I was surprised about was that he was sensitive to smells, chemical smells, and so am I, so that I remembered it. And so if some woman, you know, he's always in these swanky places and with women wearing perfume, if a woman had perfume on, he would ask her to go wash it off. He preferred frequent showering rather than applying a scent. And I was just surprised at that, you know. But even that is frank. I mean, can you imagine, or forthright, can you imagine you're meeting a beautiful woman, she's trying to impress you because you're important, and you say, lady, can you go to the women's room and wash off some of that perfume? That's pretty bold and straightforward, and it's not really an insult. He's not saying, you know, lady, you smell. He's saying, lady, I don't like your perfume, or I don't like perfume in general. And then the other story I remember from Frank and Ava was them driving down the road shooting guns. You know, right now in 2022, there's such a anti-gun push and an anti-hunter push. You know, you're supposed to be nice to all animals, you're supposed to be nice to all people. There's this emphasis on being nice and this emphasis on guns killing people. And I'm not saying guns don't kill people, but I am saying that it seems that in the 50s and the 40s, that sentiment just wasn't around. I mean, people understood that food they were eating used to be an animal, and that in order to eat it, it had to die. Whereas now there's just this disconnect that's happened, I don't know, in the 80s, 90s, and beyond. So that's Frank Sinatra. Certainly not a Frank Sinatra expert, but if you want to follow a career, that certainly seems like one. I've heard it said that he was the first teen idol, and the very important thing to remember about that is the word teenager wasn't invented until the 50s. There have always been 12-year-olds and there's always been 13-year-olds, but the idea of separating them as a class and catering to them and letting them go to concerts and letting them buy posters and so forth and marketing to them, you know, the idea of a teenager is from the 50s. And apparently he was right there at that time when the first teen idols, or idols for teens, became important in American culture. And he rode that wave to great success. So congratulations, Frank. You've had that name forever. And I just figured out the connection between your name and your life. I wonder how often you thought about it. You probably just, you know, were named Francis and wanted to be called Frank because it was more masculine. That's what I would guess. I don't know how often we think about our own names. All right. Take care, everybody. Got a matinee starting.